Hey guys, so I hope you watched the full vocabulary video before, from the beginning to end. If not, just as a quick reminder with probability, we did pretty well in the test, so I was pretty happy with that. But remember, simple probability meaning one event only, and that one we write as a ratio of what I want, like green out of total. So remember, organize your data in a table format, include the total at the end, and then write ratios as fractions. Remember, if there's more than one event happening, so we're reaching into a bag twice, we're going in and rolling a dice twice, we're rolling a dice and pulling out a marble. Okay, remember those are compound, and we're going to multiply those two ratios together. All right, so now that we're moving on into predictions from probability, but we've already kind of looked at predictions a little bit. We went away from it. Now we're going to come back to it. The steps aren't going to change. We're just going to add another step to the process. So we're still going to organize our data in a table. We're still going to find the total. We're still going to write a ratio in a sense of way, but this time we're going to be looking at more of these true-false statements. So based on our data and based on our calculations, we're going to determine what kind of statements are true, which ones are false. Now, let's look at this problem. A spinner marked with 5 sections, blue, green, yellow, red, and orange was spun 60 times. The results were blue had 10 spins, green had 15, yellow had 12 spins, red had 14, and orange had 9. Determine which of the following statements are true if the spinner was spun 300 times. Now, we'll look at the statements here in a second, but first what we need to do is figure out, well, how can we figure out what happens after 300 times? So how can we make a prediction? How can we kind of semi-tell the future, like the vocabulary said, based on what we know? So we're going to follow these steps. And step 1 still says organize the data in a table and find the total. So if I was looking at the table, and I'm going to abbreviate, so we have colors, we have blue, green, yellow, red, and orange, and spins. So again, just organizing my data in a table format. So from a list to a table, and then the total is actually what you can, if you read the problem, is in there is 60. So if we add all these up, it adds up to 60. So now what we're going to look at is, okay, well, what happens if we want 300 spins? So what we're going to do that is we're going to extend the table. So we're going to make our table longer. And what our third column is going to be, and I'm going to change colors here so that way we can see the difference, is going to be our prediction table. Okay, this is our prediction column. Now, what's important here is we need to figure out, well, what is going to be the new total number of spins? Where are we trying to get to? What is it that we're trying to predict? That's going to come from the word problem. And that is going to be this one right here, this 300. So we're going to make a prediction based on the 300 times we spin the spinner. So my new total is going to be 300. Now, here's the process we need to use to actually figure out how many each one of these times we're going to spin these spinners. I need to figure out, what do I do to 60 to turn it into a 300? Well, a lot of you are probably going to see right away, well, I just multiplied by 5. Now, we can prove that true by looking at, well, how many times does 60 go into 300? Okay. Or if we divide it by this, like this. Now, remember, we can cancel out zeros. Now, this becomes 6 into 30, and 6 goes into 30 5 times. So, I'm multiplying by 5. Now, what's important, because we talk about ratios and ratio tables, whatever we do to one thing, we have to do to all things. So, all I'm going to do now at this point is multiply everything times 5. So 10 times 5 gives me 50. 15 times 5 is going to give me 75. 12 times 5 is 60. 14 times 5 is 70, and then 9 times 5 is 45. So here's our predictions. Based on what we already know and the fact that we're trying to move to 300, we created a ratio. So it means that we're proportional, which means that whatever we're doing to one thing, we're doing to all things. So I'm multiplying everything times 5. That gives me this column for my predictions. So I'm predicting that we're going to spin the spinner a total of 50 times blue, 75 times for green, 60 times for yellow, 70, let me fix that 70 times for red, and 45 for orange. Alright, so now let's look at these true-false statements that we might see and some vocabulary that we're going to experience. So I recreated the table here, and this one's, again, it has the colors, the original amount, and the predictions amount with the process that we multiply by 5 each time. So the spinner would land on, so let's look at these true-false statements, sorry. So I want to determine which of these are true and which one of these may be false based on the vocabulary or what is it's asking me or about the statements. So what we're going to be doing is a lot of comparing. And what we're really going to be looking at is this column of predictions. Okay. We're kind of done with this one. So let's look at these statements. The spinner would land on yellow 10 more times than blue. So this would word tells me that I'm looking at the predictions. I'm looking at what would happen. So it says I would land on yellow 10 more times than blue. So let's look. If we look at the number of yellow spins, we're predicting that we would spin it 60. Blue, we predict it would be 50. So what is it asking is our prediction with yellow 10 more than blue? And we can see that this statement is actually true because yes, yellow 60 is 10 more than 50. All right, let's look at statement 2. The difference between the number of times it would land on red and yellow is 2. So the word difference means that we want to know how far apart, I highlight that word difference, the two items are. So when we look at the difference between red and yellow is 2, what that's asking is, are red and yellow in the predictions column 2 apart? So if we look at red, it's 70, and then yellow is 60. We're asking, are those two numbers only 2 apart? And that answer is false, because they are actually 10 apart. So the difference is not 2, the difference is 10. Alright, so let's look at the third statement. The number of times the spinner will land on orange is 5 times the number for blue. Now, again, vocabulary here is going to be big. And this word right here, 5 times the number for blue, is important. Okay, so sorry about that. Now, the word times is important because what that means is that times, it means to multiply. So, I want to know is if I take the number on orange and I multiply it by 5, will it give me blue? So let's look. Orange was 45, and like we've seen before, blue is 50. Now this is tricky because a lot of students might see that yes, they are 5 apart. That's true, and that means that the difference is 5. But in order for it to be 5 times, what we would have to say is, well, is 45 times 5 going to give me blue? And that is obviously not true, because when we multiply that by 5, that gives me 225, not 50. So that statement is false. So let's look at the last one. Now the last one is going to say that the total number of times it will land on green and orange is 105. So with that, we're going to be combining green and orange. And combining, we mean to add. So let's look. If green is at 75 on our predictions, and then orange is at 45 on our predictions. When I combine those, is that going to give me 105? So let's see. Let me zoom this out so I have some more room. 75 plus 45, well, that's 10. Carrier 1. 7 plus 4 is 11, plus 1 more is 12, 120. And again, that is a false statement because what we were asking was, is it going to be 105? And it's not. It is 120, so that is a false statement. Okay, so now what you're going to do is go ahead and continue on the next page on Nearpod. And then after you'll have some practice. And I will also be giving you some self-guidance on that. Now, if you have any questions, again, always stop, pause, go back, rewind. You have access to this on this video. And then you can always email me. When you're done with the practice, and I'll send you a reminder, there will be a Google form on your Google page, or excuse me, your Google Classroom to work on. All right, hope you guys are doing great, and look forward to seeing you guys in a couple weeks.